Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Dr. David Batstone, co-founder of Just Business, Not for Sale, Rebel, Dignita, and Two Shoes Organic.
Thank you. So hi, I'm David Batstone. I'm not for sale. And it is not something that, as an NGO, I plan on doing. I'm not on the screen right now, so there we go. So I am from San Francisco. And my story begins there. Venture capitalist, working in Silicon Valley, and the last thing that I was looking for was another full-time job. But to my shock, I learned that one of my favorite restaurants in the San Francisco Bay Area was a human trafficking ring that had brought over 500 teenagers from the area of Bangalore, India, into California for the purpose of forced labor. First in the restaurant, and then out to fruit and vegetable fields, construction crews, and brothels in Northern California. It was a real shock to me, so I decided, after much kind of reflection, that I needed to learn more about this. My curiosity drove me to take a year leave of absence and go around the world. Go from San Francisco to Bangalore, from LA to Thailand, from Houston to Peru. And I learned that there's 30 million people in the world today living in human slavery. Not forced, not sweatshops, low-paying wages, but people who are forced to work against their will. Along the way, I went to Thailand. And seriously, my only step when I left for that year was to expose this, understand it, write a book, because I used to be a journalist, and then go back to my investment work. But what happens sometimes is that you take one step, and then the next step happens. And I met a woman in northern Thailand that had rescued 27 kids and was living in this field with no shelter. So I said, okay, I'll build a house for you. And that was the beginning. Next thing I know, she's rescued 88 kids and then 150 kids. I'm like, slow down on the rescues. But I decided that I needed to do something else. And with my colleague who's here, Mark Wexler, we started an organization called Not for Sale. And it's really inspiring to see this village we now have in northern Thailand. 150 kids. The kids are now going to schools. They're ethnic tribal children, which are stateless. And now they're in some of the best universities in Thailand. But at the same time, I realized that when it comes to human trafficking or extreme poverty, global warming, malaria, if we have I'm a Silicon Valley venture capitalist, what do? I shut down my brain and open my heart. What I mean by that is in Silicon Valley, what would I do? I would get capital, I would get the best talent and the best technology to build a company. To fight human trafficking, I don't use capital, I get donations. I don't get the best talent, I use volunteers, and I get secondhand computers. So we decided that we would try a different model. After 5 years of building shelters, 5 years of doing services, nonprofit, NGO work, let's build companies as if we were venture capitalists to address the problem. So we started downstream. We looked at the kids in our shelter in Peru. We said, you know, most of them are coming from the Amazon area, literally upstream. How do we create inoculation against exploitation for these tribes? So we began to reinvent the business model of fighting a social problem. So the first company that we designed was called Rebel. We looked at the Amazon region. We saw that they have such rich resources, matcha, maca. Let's create a beverage where we would source those ingredients, not to get the cheapest ingredients, but to create the most economic impact. So we started Rebel, and today, roots, extract, bark, berry, leaf, Rebel, drink differently. Don't drink Coke like everybody else does. Drink differently, with purpose, the #1 health beverage in America. Instead of just sourcing in one area of the Amazon, we now source in 31 countries around the world. And we choose turmeric, and we choose coconut, and we choose our ingredients where we can have the most impact, and we measure 20,000 families whose lives are being transformed by the way we do our business. So your NGO is baked into the DNA of the company. Now, once you build that model, and $1 million going back through revenue sharing to Not for Sale, now I'm not asking for donations because my own companies are funding what we do. So once you build that supply chain, we go down to the Amazon to make sure that the villages we're working with, that this is actually working. What are the metrics? What's the actual impact we're having? But once we're there, we also learn that there's other ways that we can create, well, I'm going to go forward, all right? Other ways that we can create impact. So we have a shoe company, Z Shoes Organic. And the shoe company is sourcing the rubber like out of a tree, a rubber tree, very sustainably taking the sap like maple syrup. Also, the cotton grows in the trees. So Z Shoes becomes a profitable company. What's my goal? I want to have a better company than Nike. What's my goal with Rebel? I want to be a better company than Coca-Cola. Because I don't want to wear people suffering. I don't want to drink their tragedy in the morning when I wake up. I don't want to walk on their dreams with my designer shoes, and I don't have to anymore. I can create companies with impact that have the same goal as my NGO. All right, will this work in other places and with other models? So with Not for Sale, we said, let's see if we can do something in Holland, in Europe. If you've been to the red light district in Holland, you understand that there are women that come from all over the world, and they are taken advantage of, mostly from Eastern Europe. This woman here, his name is Toos Heemskerk. She had worked for over 16 years in the red light district with these women. When I met her, she was ready to leave because she was tired of giving promises to these girls that if they got away from their trafficker, they got out of the window, there'd be a better life. She said, David, there was no better life. I'm going to quit. I said, well, let's create a company. So first we created a gourmet soup company. We got a kitchen in the red light district. We started, the first customers would be the women behind the windows themselves. Right? We started serving to them. And then we had a texting service. What's the soup today? Ginger. Can you bring it between 3 through 3:30 when we're not seeing John's? So we cater to them. Eventually, the chief of police calls us in and says, we hear you're selling soup in the red light district. Oh my gosh, we didn't get a license to do that. We go in, and he goes, we hear you're selling soup. We say, we are. We hear it's really good soup. Best in all Holland. He goes, could you also start catering the precincts? So if you're going to start a company, get sex workers and cops as your core demographic, you're in great shape. All right? Then the mayor of Amsterdam says, I love what you guys are doing. The head of Trader Joe's in Europe says, I love what you're doing. We're going to commercialize your soup. We've got so much demand now, we need chefs, we need caterers. Guess who we go to? We start with the women behind the windows themselves. They become our chefs. We get Jamie Oliver, the naked chef, to help us design a culinary school. Right? Then the mayor of Amsterdam gives us a restaurant, a brothel to make a restaurant in the red light district. That restaurant becomes so profitable that we are able to open a second one, which is twice that size. You know what I love about this? Those restaurants create more profit that allows us to do our culinary school work without any donations. Now, it's a wonderful thing when Chanel calls you and says, we want to give $250,000 to your culinary school. Of course I'm going to accept it. But I'm not hounding Chanel. They want to be a part of something good. So, my message in 10 minutes, let's reinvent our business model about entrepreneurialized good. The NGO, the nonprofit, has its place, but it cannot scale to the level to which we can solve the problems in front of us. We need private enterprise to team up with people on the ground that are heroic, doing great things with the people who are at risk. But the model does not work if we rely on charity to solve the world's problems alone. Thank you very much.
I wanna wait.